Welcome to the Up Next Network podcast, episode 7. What a week of college
Episode
football
7.
it was. And Oliver, I know we're going to break this all down, but we had some crazy games. I think Ohio State Notre Dame for me was one of the best games I've watched in college football in a while.
That was one of the best games I've ever seen.
I mean, just action packed, low scoring, but it didn't feel like a low score. It just felt like such a well played game from both sides. Comes down to the final play, the 10-guy thing, Lou Holt, the drama. It was unbelievable. What a game. And we'll start there. I mean, are we buying in? I think first off, and I did a video right after this on One Reaction, but first off, Oliver, are we buying in to Ohio State? Because I think this game could have gone in a lot of different ways. And I don't want to talk as a Michigan fan. I could have some bias. I'll give the floor to you. What do we think of Ohio State after this win at Notre Dame?
So I personally have two big takeaways. Excuse me. Two big takeaways. Number one, that final drive from Kyle McCord is really good. Like he didn't that was a big question. Like, could the offensive line protect him, let him work in the pocket? And he looked really that final drive, he was throwing dimes across the field. That's how they got into that position to win the game. And the offensive line, I think, played pretty well. They were able to get it established a running game. Henderson looked great. He had a few big runs. So I think Ohio State, also their defense is just phenomenal. But I think offensively they did show a lot. I mean, 17 points isn't a lot, but on the road at Notre Dame in that atmosphere with a first-year starter as your quarterback, I think Ohio State's a very legit team, and they showed me a lot. I was very impressed, and that was a great win for that program.
So I'm going to play counter, and this is where the bias comes in, but I'm gonna do it. So Notre Dame had over 175 rushing yards, 176 to be exact, and they won time of possession. And coming into the week, we know Ohio State's weakness from last year, and it's the fact that they're not physical, especially in that second half.
Right.
If Notre Dame picks off that ball, right, on that final drive, are we sitting here today saying the exact same thing about Ohio State?
That's very fair. That's very fair. But I would counter that even though that happened, Ohio State still found a way. Because also you got to realize Notre Dame, they were coming in, like the hype was around them, even though Ohio State was favored. I think it was a 3-point spread. Notre Dame, this was the best they've looked in a long time. They finally had their quarterback, and Sam Hartman didn't look that good. He was a shell of himself. And I still think even if that pick happens and if Notre Dame was able to win that game, Ohio State still showed you a lot of potential, especially up front with the offensive line. Because Kyle McCord looked pretty clean for the majority of that game. Notre Dame didn't put too much pressure on him, and it's because the offensive line stepped up. So I think Ohio State had a lot of really, really good things to take away from that game. And the whole Lou Holtz thing with Ryan Day, I thought was I didn't even like it. Didn't even the fact that Pat McAfee's show made that interview is insane. But I loved that Ryan Day was speaking up for his players. That was awesome. I loved that out of him. But yeah, Ohio State, fantastic win for them.
He is a little bit of like an insecurity issue because if you're calling out Lou Holtz, we all know it was about Michigan. I'm just going to leave it at that. But I do think this year, compared to other years for Ohio State, right? With CJ Stroud, you're forced to on first, on second, on third. You're expecting the big play all the time. And that was their kind of identity. And I think the good thing for Ohio State, and I'm going to counter what I just said, is I think that their identity has now switched to we're going to run the ball and we're going to play defense. And I think that's that subtle switch. And maybe it's because they need to do it, or maybe because they want to. Because Kyle McCord, yes, he had a great drive, but there were some throws where he kind of struggled a little bit. Granted, his first game, he looked great on that last drive. But I'm saying the talent is not as great as CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud was immensely talented. You had to play through him. Now Ohio State is forced to, especially on second down. And Todd Blackledge was saying this during the broadcast, they're going to have to run the ball. And I think that subtle switch is going to force the offensive line to run block more and get better at it. And you've seen already, and I said this last week, the change from week 1 to week 4 now is the fact that they're running the ball. And that's a big thing for me. And the fact that they showed up in this game, and yeah, they got a little bullied in the second half against the run. But it feels like the Ohio State, and I'm just measuring versus Michigan, Ohio State defense, run defense and run offense got better. And it feels like Michigan's run offense, which we'll probably get to later, might have gotten a little bit worse. And that's the concerning part to me.
I mean, yeah, you kind of just hit it spot on. The running game, if Ohio State doesn't have that, I mean, we saw it against Indiana. They didn't really have a running game, and the offensive line looked pretty bad. And they only put up, 23 points against a really bad Indiana team? Indiana's 2-2. I think they're not a good 2-2. That game should have been a blowout, even though it was McCord's first true year starting, first start, all that. And the running game progressively got better against Western Kentucky. They looked really good running the ball. And then going into this week, they did what they were supposed to do. I mean, I've always been a Trevion Henderson fan. I think the whole country has, when he came on as a freshman and just dominated. And he's averaging almost 7 yards a carry. Like, he is just dominating. He has just under 300 yards for the year, but almost 7 yards a carry. Trayanum, did I say that correct? I don't know if I did. You know who I mean. The world knows who I mean. He got in for the wins. He's had a great year. He's averaging just south of 6 yards a carry. So having that, and then they also have Mayan Williams. Like, they have 3 backs that can make a difference in that backfield. And having that on top of the fact that you have arguably one of the best wide receiver prospects we've ever seen in Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and Julian Fleming, this is a team that can make some serious noise.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say, I'm just thinking about, after watching Penn State in just watching them alongside the Ohio State game, the way they played, the way their defense really got after Cade McNamara. I mean, they had 4 first downs, Iowa, in that game. Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. This is going to be a dogfight.
It is.
A dogfight.
It is. And what's crazy, I said at the beginning of the year, if I had to rank them, I went Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. And you gave me some slack. You said Ohio State, people were disrespecting them a little, and you might have been right. That changed the tide. And I mean, granted, Penn State throttled Iowa, which I expected. Iowa was just god awful on offense. But I couldn't tell you who's going to win. I couldn't tell you who's going to be the best team in that division. I really couldn't. And this is a Maryland fan. I can't, we're not there. We're not even close to there. So that 3-headed monster is insane.
And so the other thing that came up, I was reading, and we just talked about this before, but Stuart Mandel, the guy from The Athletic, there was a question because there's a scenario which is very real. I think if Penn State were to beat Michigan at home, Ohio State were to beat Penn State where Ohio State's home, and Michigan were to beat Ohio State when Michigan's at home. So all teams would have 1 loss in the conference. And it brings up to the scenario, if these teams, these Florida States, these Texases, that Pac-12 looks fantastic going forward, do you leave the Big Ten out? It feels like after this win, as much as this helped Ohio State, it helps the Big Ten too, because it feels like these 3 teams, one of them, maybe 2, have to be in.
And the other thing is, hypothetically, if all 3 teams end with 1 loss going into, conference championship season, the bowl season, all that, college football playoff, 2 of those teams aren't even going to be in their own conference championship because they're in the same division. So 2 of those teams that's actually going to benefit them if you think about it, because then it's not a chance to lose another game. And then you're going to have at least 2 teams with 1 loss, probably 3, because I think we all expect.
Yeah, I don't think the Big Ten West, after seeing what Iowa and Wisconsin have done into the year in Illinois, the Big Ten West is terrible.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you.
So I don't think the Big Ten championship, any of these 3 teams, I expect to blow out the Big Ten West champion.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. I was just because bare minimum 2 teams will go in with 1 loss into the college football playoff committee and all that. I'm assuming 3. I don't see a team in the West that deserves to be in that game, which is why divisions are stupid. Which I've said forever. It's stupid. It makes no sense. Look at the Pac-12. It's so much better. Anyway, point being, it's just so much better. The Big Ten East is unbelievable. And I couldn't tell you who the best team. I still think it's between Michigan and Penn State. I think Ohio State still, as you mentioned, there were some things that I'm giving Michigan the benefit of the doubt because they came in and have done nothing but win. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then Penn State, I think's earned it. I think they've earned being in this position they're in, especially after that Iowa game, because they throttled the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I'm still going to go Ohio State, Michigan tied for 1. I think Penn State's right below them. But can we just get the 12-team playoff this year? I mean, how electric would that be? I feel like and we would have 11 or 12 teams that are right there right now.
We have 11 or 12 teams that if someone said 3 months from now, hey, they won the national title, I'd be like, yeah, sure. That makes sense.
We'll get to that later. All right, let's keep reviewing week 4 quickly. Colorado, Oregon. To me, I'm buying Oregon stock. I don't know about you, but I know you're in love with Washington, but the defense of Oregon with Dan Lanning and the mentality that they had to absolutely throttle Colorado, To me, Washington has the 72nd total defense. Oregon has the 11th. I know the game's in Washington, but the way Bo Nix is playing right now and the way that they've run the ball, I think you could probably put Oregon as the favorite right now in the Pac-12.
I'm a little
Thoughts?
scared. I'm a little
Ooh.
scared. I'm a little scared.
Ooh.
Oregon just like they dominated. There's no other way to put it. There was a point in that game where Colorado, I believe, had 38 total yards and Oregon had 484. It was the third quarter. Like there was nothing they couldn't miss. They have the number 2 total offense in the country. And my big worry with them and why I leaned Washington at the beginning of the year was the offensive line. They had a lot of, and it was one of the best in the country, similar to Washington, but they had to replace 4 offensive line. Or I forgot how many linemen coming into the season. Maybe it was
Four. They had to play four,
right?
and they're still a top 10 rushing offense right now.
They have 2. Their running back room is crazy too. By the way, Bucky Irving's he's good. He's real good. I liked him. I like him a lot. But yeah, the defense I think for Oregon, a game changer. I still like Washington out of the pack. I mean, I have them. I told you this before. I think Washington's
You
going to
can't fade them yet. You can't fade them yet.
I can't.
That's your
right?
team.
That's your team. Not even that. Not even that. What have they done wrong? Literally, like, what have they? Penix has just been god tier. Like, I know the defense is a little susceptible. I think they gave up 32 to Cal, but they had their second and third stringers in by the middle of the third quarter. That was not their true defense. So, grain of salt. Washington, I fell in love with them in the offseason. I'm sticking with them to win the Pac-12.
Love it. You should. And I think to me, it's Oregon, Washington kind of up there. I have USC as a tier below, to me. Because I think their defense is not as good. And they get a little scared. I just think Oregon they're not worse than last year. They're probably the same. I rank USC probably the same. I just think Oregon and Washington are just a tier. They're just that much better. I don't know. Just eye test wise.
In college, especially, if you have a guy like 13 taking snaps, it kind of you don't need defense. Like, I mean, the dude is literally like Caleb Williams is phenomenal. Like, he had I was watching the USC game against Arizona State, and the defense didn't look great for USC, and I was like, man, like Caleb Williams, he didn't get off to like the hottest start, and then I went to go do something else, came back, and looked at the stats, and he had like 300 plus yards, 3 TDs, like just like ridiculous. Messing with the Sun Devils on defense. He is just phenomenal, and whoever has the number 1 pick, God bless them, because they're getting a sensational player in the NFL draft.
We will see. Yeah, I mean, probably the Bears or
actually no, Cardinals. The Bears or Cardinals. Yeah, he's coming back, but I forgot about that. But if anyone else, they're going to get a sensational player.
Yeah, I mean, so what a race of the Pac-12. As for the ACC, Florida State, they won, not pretty, and I think to me their stock I'm selling just a little bit.
Florida State, first of all, that was a huge win for them, even though they didn't look pretty. I thought they were going to go in there and win because I believe Jordan Travis will make a difference at the end of the day versus Kate. Klubnik got into a rhythm, like I said. That was the one way he can be productive and put Clemson in a position to win. Can he get in a sustainable rhythm? And he did get into that in the first half when Jordan Travis wasn't. But then Jordan Travis kind of got into that same rhythm. And you saw him be able to make plays, escape out of the pocket, continue play, extend plays. And he did what he had to do. But what you brought up last week with Clemson, they had some kicking issues, and that kind of bit them in the rear end at the end. That was unbelievable.
You think they would have won the game probably if they make that kick?
You know what the worst part is, and I don't know who's responsible for this at ESPN. After they showed him making the first kick, he made a kick earlier in the game, and like his family was there, and they all wearing his jersey. And at the end, when he missed it, the camera, I swear to God, for 15 seconds, just like zoomed in on his mother, and I was like, that is the most disrespectful thing ever. It literally like they couldn't. There's a whole box of them. Dude, the mom was literally just like dumbfounded. Like, she didn't know where to look. Like, the husband, I'm assuming a husband and wife, were just right there, blinders on, just trying not to look at each other because they're about to cry. Like, it was horrible. So shout out to that cameraman. That probably was one of his favorite moments. But yeah, and for Clemson, like, Dabo Swinney also did not manage that final possession well. He didn't. They looked scrambled. They didn't make the right decisions. I think Dabo Swinney, that was one of the first times I've ever seen him like be nervous. He literally, it looked like the moment got too big for him, but he's been in bigger situations. But that particular moment, he just was a shell of himself.
Do you think, and I think it's starting to come about now, just due to the dominance of the Pac-12, the way Texas looks and the way the Big Ten has looked, do you think, kind of like the way TCU was last year, but obviously Florida State has better wins, that with the lack of a strength of a schedule going forward, are people going to be wanting to sell and sell and sell Florida State just because they're in the ACC? They didn't look that good against Boston College, or like, is there a way Florida State just continues to fall and fall, not due to their play, just due to people and the college football playoff committee wanting other teams in over them?
I think the big thing with that is recency bias, because remember what everyone was saying about them after they beat LSU. They were saying, "Oh my God, this might be the best team in the country." And to their credit, they've done nothing but win. They haven't looked great though. The Boston College game was not good. That was a bad game for them. And then on top of that, this weekend, I mean, I think everyone expected it to be a close game, but in the first half, Florida State looked really just wasn't able to get a rhythm, wasn't able to do anything on offense. I think their defense played pretty well. I think they played a pretty good game. And I think the offense is definitely the strength of this team. So it's good to see the defense have a solid game. But yeah, I think if they don't have dominating wins when they should, people are gonna definitely start selling stock, especially in the ACC. Like you said, there's what, 2, 3 solid teams in the ACC, or maybe 4 if you go the 2 teams in Carolina.
Well,
No,
it'll
Duke.
shake out, like
Yeah,
UNC, Duke, Miami. I just
Miami.
don't know
Yeah,
how good those teams are. I just don't
yeah,
know.
but that's what I'm
No
saying.
one
Like,
knows.
are they where everyone thinks they are? Or are they going to also, because if they also start to fall, they have 2, 3 losses at the end of the year, and then you see Florida State struggle with them. Then yeah, people are probably going to say, okay, we should give the nod to another one-loss
Mhm.
team. Like for instance, if we just mentioned it, if Ohio State has 1 loss and Florida State has 1 loss, but they haven't looked as good against a weaker conference, yeah, it's not going to go well for them with the committee.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, one final game. I got to take a victory lap. Alabama. You
I
had Ole
botched.
Miss.
I
I
botched.
had Bama. I mean, what did I say? They had over 130 rushing yards, won time of possession by over 9 minutes. That's
Yeah.
how they should play. It's a running quarterback. Run the ball, trust your defense. You got McClellan as the back, who's great. Just
Yeah.
run it. Just why need to throw the ball too much? You can beat teams running the ball and playing defense. And Alabama, they'll probably end up 9, 10, potentially 11 if they can follow that formula.
Yeah, I mean, I was completely wrong in this game. I thought Ole Miss was going to come out firing, and in the early parts of the game, the offense did look good. Like Judkins was able to get yards on the ground, Jackson Dart was able to make plays through the air, and then he just ran out of gas. And Alabama's defense was phenomenal. This is a great Alabama defense. I know they struggled; they had the big loss to Texas, but they look like a completely different team defensively from then to now. And with Milrow, like you just said it, they just even with him, just run the ball, like just use your strength to your advantage. And he looked a lot better. And he looked way more motivated. He was fired up after every play. Remember that touchdown he threw when he went down to the ground and he was hurt, and then he got up and just sprinted to the
That
end
was
zone?
insane.
I
Ridiculous.
love that's what you need to see. That's what he had to show everyone. That's what he had to show Nick Saban, his teammates, Alabama fans, everyone. And yeah, that was a much needed win for Alabama, because people were starting to think like, oh, maybe the Saban dynasty is over, and Alabama's like, no, we're still here. We're still here.
We're here.
It's still Nick Saban. Yeah, big win for them. I completely missed that. And for Ole Miss, now they have to play LSU. Like imagine that 2 weeks span. Bama, LSU. That's rough.
That is tough. All right, AP poll week 5. We've I'll read off the top 10, and I want to get your take. Is there any team outside? Because we continue to mention the depth. Are you buying a team outside this top 10? Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Texas 3, Ohio State 4, Florida State 5, Penn State 6, Washington 7, 8 USC, 9 Oregon, 10 Utah. Is there a team you are buying outside of that top 10?
So remember when I said I was a little nervous about the Pac-12 because I had Washington, and I said it because of Oregon, right? There's another team that really scares me.
There is.
Washington State
Who
is
is it?
legit.
Woo!
Washington State is, dude, Cameron Ward. I mean, he just picked apart that Oregon State defense. And they had a receiver, Josh Kelly. I mean, he's phenomenal. They're an air raid offense. They always have been, no matter who the coach is. That's just the nature of Washington State football. And they looked like a well-oiled machine. I love the energy they play with. I think Cameron Ward is gonna quickly become nationally renowned, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. They looked really, really good against a good Oregon State team, a good Oregon State defense, a team that I think is still very good. I did have Washington State winning that game, but they looked phenomenal.
I think we both did. We both did.
Yeah.
Because I had him in my big three.
I will say,
But Washington was my
yeah, I
yeah,
will say though, in the fourth quarter, I think Oregon State outscored them 21-3, and you saw Washington State still
21-10.
21-10.
21-10.
Excuse me.
Yeah. That was the issue for me. That's what I was just about to
Yeah,
say to you. As good as Cam Ward was in that first half, they kind of limped towards the end a little bit.
yeah,
And that to me has some concern with other because there's so many good teams in the Pac-12. And I think we'll see how because they were at home. It was a
yeah,
favorable matchup, better QB. When you
yeah.
face a Penix, a Williams, a Nix, a Cam Rising, does that hold up? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I mean, they did definitely take their foot off the gas, but also I think that's a testament to Oregon State. They played really well in the second half. They ran all over that Cougars defense. We talked about it before we went on the air. Their running game is phenomenal. I think it was 242 total rushing yards in that game for Oregon State. That was their identity. That was their identity coming in right out the gate. I think their first 2 touchdowns were on the ground. Yeah, Oregon State, they dominated in that fourth quarter, but if Washington State can play consistently for 4 quarters, watch out. They're a team that can ruffle some feathers. What about you? You got anyone outside of top 10? Were you going to go to
Yeah,
Washington
I
State?
have two. Yeah, I have two. I still believe in Notre Dame as much as that like pains to say right now. I still think they're a really good football team, and going
Can you be
forward,
fun and not pick a
they're gonna.
team that was? Can you pick a?
I'm
Can you
not
be
picking
fun?
them. I'm just putting them on the radar. I still think they're really good, and I think they're probably. I think they're a more complete team at this point than USC. So we'll see that later in the year. But my real team I'm going with is Oklahoma because what
Dude,
they do
it was
well.
never Washington State for me. I like
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
So the reason why I like Oklahoma is Brent Venables comes in. And last year their defense wasn't right, right? But last year when Dylan Gabriel was healthy, they were in close games. And when he wasn't, that's when they got blown out. Now he's healthy, and yes, they struggled a little bit against Cincinnati on the road. That's fine. But the real reason is that their defense is good, right?
Phenomenal in
Top
secondary.
20 defense.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they were phenomenal last week, and that's what Brent Venables does very well. And you saw his impact because Clemson's not as good without him. Like without him, they're not as good defensively. They're just not. So I think Brent Venables, the way he played defense, that's good. So if you have the quarterback and the defense, and you're undefeated right now, obviously the test will come next week against Texas.
yeah.
But to me, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. Outside the top 10, you got the quarterback, you got the defense. I'll say Oklahoma.
No, that's fair. Oklahoma looked great. Does it worry you that Dylan Gabriel only put up 20 points though?
Yeah,
Does it
it
worry
does.
you that
And I
Oklahoma
thought
was?
yeah, he does. It definitely does. Yeah, Cincinnati has a pretty good defense. But I think that's a game where some games are not won all pretty, right? Michigan hasn't looked all pretty
Yeah,
in every game. That's a road game for a team that's still a little young. And you know what? They've shown it in flashes, but I think the fact that their defense is really good gives them a better floor than last season, which I think is big. And then we know their talent. We know that they have the talent of a top
yeah.
10 team. We know that. They have the recruits. It's a matter of them putting it together. But we're seeing the defense and offense in flashes. The question is, can they put it together next week versus Texas? Right?
By the way, Venables is killing it in the recruiting game. They have had multiple
Yeah.
classes, and you're getting God knows how many 5 stars. He's building something there in Oklahoma. He's building something fantastic there.
It's really impressive. It's impressive because the way Riley left and people kind of sold their stock on Oklahoma, the way they've come back is impressive, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, so our teams, let's do this before we get into previewing all these games for next week. But our teams this week, quickly. To me, I think we both should roll. I know Maryland struggled, and we were texting about it during the game, that they struggled a little bit again. Who they play last week?
Michigan State. Great prep.
Michigan State. They struggled against Michigan State, but they should. But I mean, Indiana went to 3 or 4 overtimes with Akron. I think that should be a win.
Well, here's the thing with Maryland. It was the same thing with Washington State. They got off to a hot start. I believe the score was 21-3 at halftime. And then that third quarter, they sort of started to slow down. They weren't pressing their foot on the gas. Talia was making bad reads. I think he had that one interception where it was just a horrible. All his interceptions this year have been bad reads where it just doesn't make sense. He's just forcing the ball there. But when he's not thinking and he's just letting the play develop, he looks great. Tyrese Chambers finally found the end zone. That was a transfer that I was big on. Finally got his first touchdown in Maryland. The running game looked, like it wasn't great. It wasn't, I was hoping to see a little bit more out of that, but yeah, I mean, we're a better team than Indiana by far. And we are going to be on Big Noon going into Ohio State. And if we're 5-0, And if they're
You think,
5-0,
yeah. So we were talking about that. So if they win, which Maryland should, that's probably the big noon game next week because they would
it is.
probably
Did you not see?
rival.
It got
Oh, it is.
announced.
It is. They
Yeah, it
they did.
officially got
So
announced.
there. So you have Maryland, Ohio State, Texas, Oklahoma, both at 12. Correct. Next week,
Maryland, say that
I think
again.
so. Maryland, Ohio State at 12. Texas at Oklahoma at
Yes.
12.
Yeah.
Back to wow. That's gonna be a fun 12 o'clock slate.
Here's my thing too. I swear to God, if we are not ranked being 5-0 going into Ohio State, I'm gonna boycott the NCAA. There's not enough teams that are 5-0 to where they can lead us
Fox
out.
Fox is already paying them off, so don't worry. They're paying the AP poll. You got to rent it. You have to.
Good.
If
I
they win,
don't care. We
I'm
better
kidding,
be
but
in the
they
top
should. They should.
25.
I think they will.
If we're 5-0
And
and we're a Power 5 team,
yeah,
like
I
come on.
agree. And with the amount of teams that there are, and there's some again, like Kansas plays this week, 24. Like we'll see some teams this week
Yeah,
that are kind of put up for grabs if Oregon State loses.
right.
Duke too. So I think they should be ranked. As for Michigan, Nebraska, quickly, Nebraska's good defensively, top 25 defense, but their quarterback, they had Jeff Sims. He got hurt. It's Harbaugh Burke, if I pronounce that correctly. He was 8 for 17, 107 yards and 1 touchdown versus a non-power 5 school last week. Bottom line, I think for both of us, blow them out. Let's move on to
Yeah.
bigger and better.
Yeah.
All
Here's the
right.
thing with Harbaugh, it's kind of like David and Goliath, except there's 11 Goliaths on Michigan's defense. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
it's not gonna be good.
And we talked about that Michigan Rutgers game where I had serious concerns, and the game was tough start. I mean, I'm
Rutgers is real.
walking to the stadium. Yeah, they're a good team, and I think Michigan just their will, their defense, and the run game looked better last week, which
Yeah.
helped me out a little bit. Like JJ looked better. I think last week was a classic, fundamental, sound game from Michigan.
I
And to
agree.
me, the concerns I had for Bowling Green half washed away. We'll see how they come out. First road
Yeah.
game, first test this week. But they have much more talent than Nebraska. It's not a night game. A couple years ago it was closer.
Yeah.
I think Michigan should win, but you never know with a road game. And you never know. Never
Yeah.
know.
By the way, one last thing. When we played Maryland played Indiana last year, that game came down to the wire. Talia got hurt. Billy Edwards, the backup, came in. And Indiana, like that would have been a huge win if they were able to beat us. I'm not saying they're gonna win. Maryland, I believe, will win this game. I think Indiana is gonna be really motivated, and I think they're gonna keep it close for a little bit. I think for like in the first half, I think Indiana is gonna keep it close. I think Maryland will pull away because it's the same thing with Michigan, Nebraska, just more talent,
Yeah.
right? Just more talent. I think Indiana is going to come out strong in that game, but I think Maryland will pull away and win.
They're a really bad team. Like,
Yeah, no.
objectively, Indiana's a really bad team.
Yeah, did you see that video, by the way? I think it was after one of their wins. They were singing that fight song. And it was like,
I didn't see that.
Dude, it was like a jazz band. They were literally like snapping like this, singing it. It was awful. It was so bad.
Tom Allen, man. Tom Allen. All right. Friday, we've got this week. So not as great of a slate, obviously, but there are some interesting games that I wanted to touch.
Very interesting.
Utah at Oregon State. First off, I don't think we can pick it because we don't know if Cam Rising's playing. Oregon State is favored by 3, which suggests he might be limited in some way. We talked about how good Oregon State was in the second half. 242 yards rushing versus Washington State, which was really impressive. Outscored him 21-10 after that slow start. Do you think Oregon State, with a healthy Cam Rising, wins this game?
Man, with Rising, that changes everything. I think as a team's, I'll say this. I would believe Oregon State's going to win this game if Cam Rising does not play. I just think Oregon State right now is a better team than you. I don't think Utah should be number 10. I really don't. Now, if Cam Rising plays, he's a veteran presence. He's been in these environments before. He has USC's number, for God's sake. I mean, every time they play him, he's just a different guy. I think if Cam Rising comes out and plays, I think it's going to be closer. But my problem with Utah is this: they should not have kept that game close with UCLA. They had so many. There were so many opportunities for them to just pull away. Their defense played phenomenally, and they could not take advantage of that at home. Oregon State's a hard place to play, and this is not going to be against a unexperienced young team. This is DJ's a fifth year senior, fourth year senior. He's a senior, regardless. Jonathan Smith is a excellent head coach. Excellent head coach. This is the first time they've really had a lot of weapons. I don't think in recent years we've been able to say that about Oregon State. We talked about the run game. Offensive line is solid. I think Oregon State, to me, they're objectively a better team. So I would take Oregon State.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, obviously they're at home, and I think they're the side. But I do have concern with DJ. I didn't think he played that well at all. I really didn't. And I think the one thing that's going for Oregon State is that Cam Ward presented a lot of challenges, I think, against that secondary that was kind of rebuilding. Oregon State still is a top 10 rushing defense. And I think Utah doesn't have the explosiveness that Washington State does. So I think the matchup lends better to Oregon State. It's just DJ's got to play better.
Yeah.
He's got it.
He did have his moments where it looked better throughout the game, but you're right. He has to play a complete game. And if Cam Rising is playing, you can't give him too many opportunities. If those third downs that he can't convert turn into punts, and you give Cam Rising more opportunities, more time of possession, then Utah can definitely win this game. I just think, number one, coming off a torn ACL, that's really hard to do. Number two, on the road in the Pac-12, really hard to do. And Oregon State, to me, I think this is a bounce back game. I think they were really upset they didn't win that game. That was a close game. They came back at the end. They've played hard. I don't think Jonathan Smith's going to let them come out flat. I just think this game to me has Oregon State all over it.
Love it. And I think they're the side. I do. But let's see DJ play well. All right. Game day this Notre Dame at Duke. And to me, I mean, if I'm a player on Notre Dame, as much as I like them, how do you come out for this game? And I know Duke is number 17, but with the way Clemson's look now, to me, I'm just not a believer in Duke at all. And if Notre Dame even half wakes up, 3/4 of the way wakes up, plays a big game, I think they win. I just don't believe in Duke yet.
I agree. I know Riley Leonard, I think, is a great quarterback, and I think he's done great things at Duke this year. But yeah, I think with Notre Dame, they didn't play all that well, and they still almost won. Maybe if they had an 11th player on the field, they would have won. I mean, that was just a whole disaster. Like, good God. But
Yeah.
point being, I agree with you. I think Notre Dame can win this game. The offense is a bit of a concern, though. The offense is a bit of a concern. They came out kind of flat against
No,
Ohio State.
I'll disagree because I think Ohio State just had more, like, it just felt like in that game they had more talent.
Phenomenal defense for the Buckeyes, by the way.
Phenomenal. And that they can match up as to where they didn't have to put 7 or 8 guys in the box, which is a change for them. I think Duke is going to need to put 9 to 10 guys in the box. And if Hartman has success, which he's had in every other game besides Ohio State, to me, Notre Dame's they should win this game. And if they wake up, they win.
I agree. I think the big thing for if Duke wants to have a chance in this, they got to score early. But I just don't see them. I don't see them coming out and just like shocking this defense. Especially, I don't think. First of all, I think Marcus Freeman's going to come out more motivated than he ever has because
you could see it an obvious plan. Yeah.
I mean, you could see it in his face when they said you had 10 players on the field. What happened there? And you could see it in his face, on his face, in his soul. He believes that loss is completely on him. He's a great head coach, though, and defensively, he's fantastic. I think they're going to come out and just dominate on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think Duke's going to have a lot of rhythm. I don't think they're going to be able to sustain drives. I agree with you. I think Notre Dame wins.
All right, yeah. I mean, and you think with a veteran QB and a coach who's really motivated, as you just said, Oliver, it just feels like this is a just talent gap game. And again, if it comes to the point where Duke starts fast, Notre Dame starts slow, and the home crowd gets into it, it's game day, there's a lot of energy, then maybe it's different. And you can always never pencil in an away team. But in a game where Notre Dame, with the way they lost last week, but the talent that showed and the way they've dominated every other game, they should win.
I agree.
They should.
I agree.
All right. USC Colorado, big noon game of the week. We know Colorado got walloped last week. This, to me, and this is my gut feeling, is that, as I said earlier, I don't think USC is as good as Colorado. I mean, as good as Washington and Oregon.
I was gonna say, good God.
No. And I think another thing that plays into this is a 12 p.m. start. So if USC starts slow, there's going to be a lot of energy in that building. You know, Colorado's going to come out to play. First half wise, obviously, I think USC wins the game. First half wise, is this closer in terms of a disparity between these two teams just because of the situation around the game? Colorado's at home. It's an earlier start. It just feels like maybe USC starts a little bit slow and maybe Colorado gets a lead early and that kind of changes things. Crowd gets into it. There's a world where I can see that.
Right. No, here's the thing is the atmosphere is going to be electric. Colorado has proven that in the first part of the season, they can get a fired up crowd. So I agree with you. I think the crowd's going to get into it a lot. The thing with Colorado, though, is that offensive line is terrible. The offensive line is just, it's really bad for Colorado. And that's USC's strength defensively. They put pressure on the quarterback. They're one of the best in the country at being able to put pressure, one of the top teams in sacks. I think that's going to be the difference. If the offensive line can come out and give Shedeur opportunities in the first half to make plays, because on that USC defense, the weakness is the secondary. It's not so much the front. It's not so much the front four. It's the secondary that's been letting up a lot of big plays. I mean, Arizona State last week, they were able to put up 28 points. That can't be the case. You can't be giving up 28 points to a team like Arizona State. So for me, I think if Shedeur can have a clean pocket for long enough, Colorado can stay in this game, but their offensive line is the worst in the Power Five, or arguably the worst in the Power Five. I think USC can take advantage of that. By the way, you want to hear a crazy stat? This is the most insane thing ever. Going into the game against Cal, before that game, Michael Penix has been sacked less times in his Washington career than Shedeur was sacked on Saturday.
That is nuts. Really?
Yes. That's why I think USC can 7 times in the game. That was in the start of the third quarter.
It just, yeah, I know. But USC is they're the 75th rushing defense. It's not like I just feel like there's to me, it's Oregon, Washington, and then USC. And I feel like there is a making of this game where you can see it. I know they have 13, and that changes everything. But Colorado's got a great QB of its own. I know they got walloped last week, but they've also had some good wins. They're at home. It's an early start. I'm just saying, first half-wise, I think Colorado comes out with an edge. I believe in them. I do.
I think though, I mean, if there's a team to come out with an edge and that needs to come out with an edge, it's definitely them. They need to come out with about 100 edges because that's what they're gonna have to do to make up for last week's just tragedy. But the thing with SC, it's the same thing with me for I forgot what game we were talking about where we said the talent gap. With Notre Dame Duke. We were saying the talent gap. No Travis Hunter, and outside of Shedeur, the talent gap between USC and Colorado is pretty massive. And they have some great play. They have some really nice receivers. I do believe that. But those nice receivers played at Oregon. We saw the difference. It's just a different beast. And I just don't see a scenario where Colorado can pull this out. If they can't protect Shedeur, it's going to be uglier. It's going to be ugly, and it's going to be a blowout.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's closer than people are like. That's my gut, but we'll see. All right, this is the game. If I had to circle an upset, it just has it written all over it. Kansas at Texas. Hear me out. Texas next week. Oklahoma coming up on deck. Last week they blow out Baylor, prime time. They're feeling good. Kansas rolls in. Dual threat team, top 12 rushing offense. I see this as closer than expected, and I never trust Texas when they're a big favorite at home.
No, I totally get that. The thing I was confused about when I saw this, I think the line is way favoring Texas. The line should be a lot less.
Yeah,
way too much. I was very shocked to see that. Kansas is real. Kansas is a real team. I think this is going to be. I agree with you. I don't think Texas is going to cover. I think this is going to be a close game. I think they have a great offense at at Kansas. You mentioned it, top 12 rushing offense. This is a legitimate team, and the strengths of these teams are their offenses. I can see this being a shootout. I can see this definitely being a shootout, and I think Texas is the better team overall. I think they have more talent overall, so I think they're going to come out, win. That atmosphere, Austin is good. This is the best atmosphere they've had in years, just based on the fact that they're the 3rd ranked team in the country. So it's going to be even more rocking than normal. I think Texas wins, but I agree with you. I don't like 16.5.
I just don't like it. And and they started slow against Wyoming right after that win versus Bama.
They did.
It's so tough for a team, and this is when Michigan plays Maryland, it's the same thing. When you have to play your rival the next week, when you're amped up, 2 teams that should be undefeated going the next week, you see this just all the time, that these teams come out soft, they're flat, and looking ahead and feel like this is an easy win. I just love that QB, Daniels at Kansas, and Jalen Daniels. To me, they run the ball, and if they can control the clock a little bit, Quinn Ewers starts a little slow. Why can't they cover?
I agree.
100%
I agree.
Can.
Definitely can cover. I mean, they have a chance to win this. Kansas is a good team.
I do. Yeah.
They're a good team. They have a chance to win this.
We
I
do.
think Texas is going to pull away at the end, or maybe not even at the end. I think Texas is just going to pull away. I think they're going to figure some things out. I think they look up. They look real good. I like Quinn Ewers a lot. I love their receivers are nice. Their receivers are AD Mitchell, fantastic. Xavier Worthy, fantastic. And if they
Oh,
can
they're
expose
amazing.
that Kansas secondary, I think it's going to be a big win for Texas. I would imagine, again, high octane offenses coming into this. I would imagine both teams get in at least into the 30s. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
one of those games, 42-35 or 45-38, whatever the case might be. I think that's going to be roughly the score, and then Texas wins it.
Yeah, that's fair. Georgia, Auburn, quick. We both like Georgia to roll, but is there anything here with an upset?
I mean, I just think this is a classic. Georgia's going to come in and stomp them. They're the transfer quarterback Peyton Thorne, who came in from Michigan State. He's been getting the majority of the snaps for Auburn. They have messed around a little bit trying to see what other options they have, but I just think Georgia's much better team, offense, defense, head coach. I see Georgia winning this easily and covering.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I just think Georgia has not looked like Georgia in a way.
100%.
If you've looked in these first halves and following along, Georgia's kind of struggled a little bit. And I think
They have.
this year compared to last year, where we had Georgia as that unanimous number one team, I don't think that's the case anymore. And I think, yeah, they'll probably win. They'll probably cover against Auburn. But there's a reason why this line's not 21.5 or 7. Like last year, it would have been 21.5. It's 14.5 because it's a QB on the road in a tough environment. And Carson Beck, he's gotten better each game. His QBR has gotten up in each game he's played.
Yeah.
But he struggled in that first half against South Carolina. Yeah, Georgia should probably win talent coaching wise on paper, but you never know on the road in the SEC. That's all I'm saying.
I don't see Payton Thorne getting through this Georgia defense. It's a
Yeah.
similar thing. It's the same thing with the Michigan Nebraska game. Like, I know that Michigan team is too good defensively for Nebraska to break through. It's a struggling offense as is with Nebraska and with Auburn. Georgia's just too good overall. And I agree with you. Carson Beck has not looked great. I didn't think they were undisputed number one team coming into this year. I don't think anyone did really. I think it was just back-to-back national champions, put them at number one, and they're there until they lose. So I think Georgia's come out. I think they cover. I think they win big.
Fair. And can we get a coin for this next game, this final game? Florida, Kentucky. I don't know. I would lean Kentucky just because they're at home, but any thoughts?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. This is a strange game. I like that Kentucky's favored because they are the home team. Florida, I think they're still riding high on that big win they had a few weeks ago against Tennessee. I think it's a tough environment though. I think it'll be interesting to see. I'm blanking on his name, Florida quarterback. Graham Mertz. I'm going to be interested to see how he plays in this type of environment. Kentucky's a real team. One of the better teams that are unranked. I think everyone would agree. Like they're one of the better unranked teams. I think Kentucky wins. I don't know. It's just a weird game. It feels weird.
Yeah.
It's weird
It feels like
that it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, it is weird. But you got to give, if Billy Napier, I think we kind of wrote Florida off after losing to Utah in that first game, but it was the first game with Billy Napier and Graham Mertz. That win against Tennessee was really impressive. And I think the way they run the ball, I think that's really good. And the fact that they got their center back was huge. And now going in this game against Kentucky, you win this game if you're Billy Napier, all of a sudden just the good vibes of Florida just continue to keep rolling and the talent level. Florida's probably more talented, right? It's a matter of, you're right, Oliver. It's Graham Mertz. And can he come into this game? He's already been on the road, so he's already experienced that game. Can he come into this game, be consistent, throw the football well, like he did against Tennessee, and lean on that run game? Because if they can, and they win this game, I think this is a big move for Florida. I think if you win this game, this is after losing your stud quarterback last year. You come into this year, you beat Tennessee at home. Now you go on the road, beat an undefeated Kentucky team. Those are two really good wins. Really good wins.
Really good wins. And Florida also, it's just one of those teams when they're good, college football is better. There are a few teams, Texas, honestly, all the teams this year, Texas, USC, Miami's good this year, Florida's good. Like when they're good, the brand of college football is just better. So if they win that game, that's huge for Florida. It's huge for college football. And Gainesville is going to be a pop in place if Florida can continue this.
It will be. It will be. And I think I'll give you one more bold one just to end this off. I think going forward as this starts to shake out and we see this thing coming, I think we're going to see the Pac-12, because Pac-12 and Big Ten right now 7 of the 10 in the AP top 10 are Pac-12 or Big Ten. I think we are going to see either 2 Big Ten or either 2 Pac-12 teams in the college football playoff.
It's almost like someone said at the beginning of the year that Pac-12 was the best conference in the country, and then someone got yelled at.
I didn't say that. I said,
No,
I give you the credit
said,
there.
I
know.
said it was the best. I said that.
That's fair. No, I gave you that. I'm saying I think if there's any 2 team, and I said this last week, I said it was the Big Ten, but now after watching this week with the way Oregon played, Big Ten, Pac-12, I don't see Florida State or Texas. One of those 2 teams is going to fall out. I just know college football. I think one of those 2 conferences gets 2 teams, and it would be funny if it's the Pac-12 because they're done next year.
Dude, if the Pac-12 team wins can you imagine how the commissioner who Klyakov, he should just disappear off the face of. He needs to go he needs to go to like a random island and just like stay there and just like communicate with people with like a can and a string and just stay there and not just don't leave. If a Pac-12 team wins the national championship this year, this man is going to feel like below rock bottom. I mean, like whatever's below rock, who cares? But I hope to God a Pac-12 team at least makes a national title game because that would be so just hysterical.
So it'll be Oregon in the national title.
No, that team in Washington's really good. It's really good.
Can't wait for that game.
By the way, Jalen McMillan, one of those receivers everyone's high on at Washington. When they put up 59 against Cal, Jalen McMillan didn't play.
700. Okay. I still can't get over the fact that they had over 700 yards versus Michigan State. I thought that was ridiculous.
Dude, their offensive line's playing great. That sack stat is still crazy to me. That Shador's got sacked more times than Penix, and I think they said it was 690 snaps. Or something crazy like that. Michael Penix has been sacked less than Shador was on Saturday.
Wow. All right. Yeah. That's it. I mean, great week 4. Should be a solid week 5. I think we both think there could be an upset this week. I think there could be. And I think we could be talking about the Jayhawks.
Who knows? Hey, if they go in and beat Texas, I think they're legit, but I think the country is going to start to say Kansas is legitimate, like really, really legitimate. I agree.
You just can't go all in on Texas. You just can't.
No, you can't. You never can. You never can. It just doesn't work. Post Vince Young, it just doesn't work. It's really no. Actually, respect to Colt McCoy when they were in the national championship. Post Colt, it's just been a disaster. So who knows? I hope Texas wins, but they better be ready to go.
Yeah. All right. That's it. I mean, it should be a fun week for Oliver, for Matthew. That's it for episode 7 of the Up Next Network podcast.
See y'all.